Over the past few months, it's become pretty clear. There is a monster on the loose within MAGA.
I would say, though, that a big challenge to that is organized Jewry in America.
It's not an attack from the outside, no. This is fully coming from within. A mutant force growing in strength within their ranks. MAGA has an extremist problem, but make no mistake, this is the monster that they created. So let's talk about why this particular monster was always inevitable and why it's currently being defended by the very men it's almost certain to destroy. If you've ever read the story Frankenstein or maybe seen the new adaptation by Guillermo del Toro, then you know how the story goes. Man is afraid of death, afraid of loss. He has an idea. What if I cheat death instead? Against all odds, it works. A creature is born. It's powerful. It's capable of everything man is not. But what the man does not realize is that the creature's immortality comes at a cost. The creator's life. When it comes to MAGA, I believe we're witnessing a similar tale. So to really understand the threat that extremism poses to this movement, we have to go back to the beginning, where every good story starts. I know MAGA is technically a political movement, but I don't think it's ever really been about politics. I think MAGA is really about survival, specifically survival of a world that no longer exists. Much like Dr. Frankenstein, I believe that the men and women within MAGA are afraid, not so much of physical death, but more so of loss, of being replaced, of losing their status, of change. And as a resistance movement formed against ideas of progress that felt like extinction to them, their rallying cry became very simple. You can't make me. That was the seed. Not so much a movement, but as a refusal to participate in any other movement of progress. But this key idea, this refusal to progress in society, to be open-minded or open to new ways of thinking, has always been indicative of some other key movements that far predate MAGA, specifically any extremist ideology that has ever existed. According to the tale, Dr. Frankenstein builds his creation from the mismatched body parts of the dead. And one could say a Trump rally holds similar narrative space, watching anti-vaxxer homeschool moms standing next to Proud Boys in the crowds. See, the problem with MAGA being an anti-movement is that there isn't a value thread holding its supporters together. It's just this refusal to accept modern society, this you can't make me attitude. And because of that, MAGA became this fill-in-the-blank movement where it kind of meant whatever people thought it meant, and it meant a dozen different things to a dozen different people, as long as it meant you can't make me something. Anything from you can't make me use paper straws to you can't make me accept that women are humans, and everything in between. Because their leader, Donald Trump, he didn't have this grand vision, this alternate reality that he wanted to see actually come to fruition. He was always using them to achieve his own goals that were only for him, his own status and his own legacy. MAGA was this Hail Mary project, this ungodly science experiment that was never really supposed to work. Just like with Dr. Frankenstein, it was against all odds that the lightning struck and it was alive. The idea of MAGA, what it actually is, only really works as a resistance to what is happening. But now it's been successful. They have successfully stopped progress in a lot of different areas. It has been forced to ask the question that I think it's avoided for a long time, because I believe this is the question that will almost certainly lead to its undoing. Okay, we achieved our goal. Now what? When forced to reflect on the intention behind his creation, Dr. Frankenstein admits what we knew all along. I never considered what would come after the creation. In much the same way, I don't think Donald Trump ever considered what would happen to MAGA after him because it didn't matter to him. He already got what he wanted out of it. What they do with it is up to them. And because of that, there's this vacuum of leadership that exists around the actual mission of MAGA. And filling in that vacuum is not just one person with one idea of where the movement's going to go next. It's a dozen different people with a dozen different ideas of what they think MAGA even is to begin with. And what's really telling of just how fractured this movement actually is when you listen to these different leaders who all have different ideas of what they think MAGA is to begin with, talk about what they think the movement should do next. It tends to boil down to something like, I think everyone in the entire world should be forced to be exactly like me and agree with me, which poses a really fundamental problem. You have a ton of people who believe more than anything, you can't make me, now forced to be facing each other and battling for whose vision of the future is gonna win out. And yet every other faction is gonna say, you can't make me do that if it's something different than what I want. So it really poses this existential threat, just how divided these different parties are. And all of this is a breeding ground for extremism. And what's been particularly fascinating is how it's the younger people, the next generation of MAGAs, who are turning on the leaders and questioning everything that they stand for and their own legitimacy. Is our goal to remove illegal immigrants or to close down our borders and never allow immigration ever again? Is our goal to be a Christian theocracy or to actually eliminate certain people groups? Is it enough for our next leaders to agree on our tenets because J.D. Vance's wife isn't white, she isn't Christian, and that means his kids aren't white either, and maybe they're not Christian. What are we going to do about that? And so you have everyone from J.D. Vance to Vivek Ramaswamy to Ben Shapiro to the new quote-unquote Charlie Kirk, Brylan Hollihan, all being attacked verbally by various groups of people within MAGA saying, hold on a second, you're not really MAGA, you're not really part of the MAGA that I'm in. Uh-oh, that sounds like a pretty big problem. But then you have Nick Fuentes, who is kind of like the anti-movement within an anti-movement, who believes actually, very arrogantly, that he's just biding time, because he's only 27 years old right now, until the time when MAGA becomes just like him, and eventually the Republican Party becomes just like him, and eventually they get the country.
There's sort of two ways you could play this. You could infiltrate the conservative movement. I could recant all my views and apologize and pretend to be one of them and bypass the gatekeepers, the censors. I said, or I could kind of be in the wilderness and I would be alone and I would be radioactive, but I could challenge the credibility and legitimacy of the conservative movement and its claim to represent conservatives. And that was kind of the mission, was to say, no, the immovable standard is America first. I'm going to represent it. And the conservative movement is going to have to move to me. I will not move towards them.
Once the creature takes on the life of his own, Dr. Frankenstein's perspective on what it means to cheat death really shifts from avoiding physical death to surviving the attacks from his own creation. The list of MAGA leaders being challenged right now by their own community is growing by the day. In tribal warfare, survival is all that matters. Not only did the MAGA movement envelop the groups who already were centered around hate, but their very viewpoint has created this environment where it's become normalized to figure out who else can we eliminate from the movement, from this country, what else do we want to get rid of? It's an elimination battle. And so this was always going to be the resolution. There can only be one version of what America is supposed to be that can win out. And along the way, I think what we're going to see is them destroy each other way before they have a chance to actually destroy all of America. And we're seeing their worst traits on display, showing us the pathway to their own destruction. In an effort to survive, MAGA is much more likely to simply implode. My question is, what will they take with them on their way down? The idea of MAGA, of resisting modern ideas, of resisting open-mindedness, of resisting change, that thing will never die. People will always fear change. They will always feel like they're being replaced. They will always be afraid of the future. That's just a part of being human. But the political force that is MAGA right now, I believe we're seeing it at its height. People like Ben Shapiro are not going to go quietly. People like Vivek Ramaswamy, who have built their whole career to this point, are not going to go quietly. J.D. Vance is not going to go quietly, and neither is this growing base of young people who are starting to see them as the toxic enemies. They will cause a civil war amongst themselves. They will intensify. People will continue to leave, as they've already started to do. And the people like Marjorie Taylor Greene on the political side of things will only increase. She's already planted her flag as the anti-MAGA, post-Trump Republican. And I think we're going to start to see more and more Republicans choose that off-ramp to quietly separate from the disaster that is ahead of us. I don't think this will be fast. I think that there will be plenty of opportunity for them to try to turn around. I just think their ability to be resilient in the face of challenges is very, very low based on who these people are at their core and what motivates them. That's the reason why I don't think that they will be able to come back from this. So my question is this: as people start to leave MAGA, as they are beginning to do, what is the chances that they will actually be reflective? That they will recognize that the thing that drove them into that place was always fear of change? Do they know what they're really afraid of? Do they know what change really means? Do they know that if they were willing to be a part of productive change, maybe they could get a seat at the table to create the world that they wanted to create alongside other people who would see them as a human being and not just as a tool to be used? And for the rest of us, would we be willing to forgive them for what they've put us through? Would we be willing to put that in the past and allow someone like that a seat at the table, to be honest, to be vulnerable with the things that they actually fear the most? That maybe there is a future where they don't lose everything that matters to them, that's both positive for them and for everyone else.